So this week's live is all about lifting the January blues without spending any money. So the start of this week, the Monday of this week, in the UK we call it Blue Monday. So it's meant to be the most depressing day of the year because in England our paydays are quite like there's a big time between the December payday and the January payday. The weather's cold, the days are long, it's all dark, so people are feeling like it's a long time to wait for money, it's a long time to wait for the summer, and it's just all a bit gloomy. Christmas is behind us, all of those sorts of things. Now, I don't think I've ever properly felt the January blues, and I definitely feel it less now that I work for myself, which I know is a wonderful privilege that not everybody has, but it's because I just absolutely love what I do. I thought I'd put together some tips for making January just feel that little bit nicer, but without having to spend any money, because some of you may be on quite a tight budget at this time of year. Some of you may be doing certain sort of New Year's resolutions or changes to your habits, such as not drinking, or certain diet changes. Maybe you're going down the veganuary route. So I was conscious to kind of think of some ways to make January lovely, but without being like, oh, you have to go and buy this or do anything that I consider to be too much effort. So these are things that I have actually done this month. And whilst you can sort of do these things at any time of year, I thought, oh, let's talk about them now because January and it's free. So I've got 4 tips, and they're like, you can take them as you wish, basically. So if you're like, that doesn't sound like anything I'd enjoy doing, totally fine. But it might be that there's actually some elements of what I've done that you'd actually quite like, or you might say, oh, I can revisit that idea in the future. So point number 1 is about re-looking at your morning routine. So I've talked previously about my morning routine and how I've kind of designed my morning routine to make sure I am not wasting anything in terms of like the products I use and the food I consume. But I'm also quite I was going to use the word strict, but I think I've actually just got myself into a really good habit with my morning routine, and I've made sure that I've changed and edited my morning routine so it's something that I actually really enjoy doing. So I typically, on a weekday anyway, I would wake up at 6 o'clock, I would read for half an hour, and the things that I used to read were business related books. So I started this as a habit to increase my knowledge in business, in marketing, sales, whatever it was that I felt like I'm really struggling with this right now. But now, I'm not saying that I've learned everything that I need to know in that area, I totally haven't, but now I actually use that time just to learn more about a person or about a concept, a time in history, whatever it is. So long as I feel like it's going to be useful, I will read it. And I do tend to read more non-fiction than fiction. That's just my preference. But now that I've set that time, like now I put that time into my morning routine, I read every single day, when I used to just not read. So I'm dyslexic, I'm a slow reader. I used to really despise reading for quite a few years, actually. I just wouldn't read at all, and then I would never want to fit it into my afternoon or evenings. Even if I had spare time, it was just never something that I decided I wanted to do. So by putting it in my morning routine, I was like, I really love this, and it's really stuck. So the first part I do reading, and then I do meditation. The reason why I started meditation, and I only started this I actually started this February of last year. So meditation was something that sort of helped me through this slightly gloomy time in the UK. I began meditating because I was reading a lot of these business books that I was talking about, and a lot of entrepreneurs were saying that they meditate daily and it really helps them make good business decisions. But far beyond that, it just helps them focus on what they're wanting to do with their life, on their messaging, and all of these sorts of wonderful reasons as to why they meditate. So I was like, well, let's try it. And I now do it pretty much every single day. Definitely try and do it every work day, every day that I'm in work. And I absolutely love it, and it serves me really well. I also have a couple of extra parts of my morning routine, and these come after I've had my breakfast. So I also do some journaling, and I do a quick visualization, and it's really quick. It's 3 minutes. So my journaling, I actually just answer the same questions every single morning. So my morning journaling is never very it is deep and I'm asking myself questions, but it's almost like a check-in with myself. Whereas if I'm going to journal in the evening, it's far more to do with, I feel like I've got a issue that I want to get to the bottom of. But in the morning, I just literally ask the same 4 questions, which I totally should have written down right now because they have slipped out of my head. But it's basically like, how am I feeling right now? What could I be doing better? What could I be doing different? And I answer the same 4 every day. So then, end of the week, end of the month, I can look back through and I can sort of see trends, and I can see things that I should be scheduling in my diary, or things that I should be getting out of my diary. And then my 3-minute visualization is unguided meditation. Just set an alarm for 3 minutes and I will visualize whatever is coming up. And it works really well if something is making me I know it's going to make me nervous. So it might be that actually I have quite a busy day and I want to visualize fitting everything in the day and feeling like I've achieved everything I wanted to by the end of the day. Or it might be that I've got an event on in the week, and I know that I need to be on top form for that. So I will visualize that audience and speaking to them and sharing the message about zero waste living. Or it might be actually further in the future, maybe a project that is in the pipeline but I haven't actually started working on, and I want to visualize the finish point of that. So when I have done all of those parts of my morning routine, I then start my working day. Now, the point that I was getting at with this talking through my morning routine is whenever I feel a little bit gloomy, or whenever I feel like I just don't want to do my morning routine anymore, I'll actually go back and look at it and say, right, well, which are the bits that I don't like anymore? What could I do to move it around? If I have a shorter time for the reading or a longer time for the meditation, or move them around, how's that going to feel? And I did that at the start of January. So before I started back at work, I sat down and said, okay, is this still what I want to be doing? What could I be adding in? And it was actually those journaling questions that I added in January. So that's tip number 1, free tip number 1. Either change up your morning routine if you're already a morning routine kind of person, or maybe just test some things out and see whether they work for you. If you're not a morning person, it might not work for you so well, so you might actually just want to focus on a midday routine or an evening routine. You do you. Point number 2 is about scrolling on social media. So I know that I used to have a really big problem with scrolling on social media and just filling up time doing pretty much nothing. So I know I've said that all of these points I've started doing in January, but this one I did actually do at the latter end of last year. So what I did was I made my Facebook feed basically as boring as it possibly could. So I started to unfollow a lot of different groups, like a lot of groups that were sort of filling up my feed with stuff that maybe I did enjoy reading, but was almost like wasting my time. So I'd hide all of these groups. So then I would go on Facebook and I would sort of scroll maybe 3 or 4 times, and then I'd be like, oh, well, I've already read that because I read that the last time I logged on Facebook. So then, because I was like, oh, well, I've already seen it, then I can put my phone down and carry on with what I'm doing. So I wasn't completely removing Facebook from my life. I was just getting rid of a large bulk of it. So I use Facebook for work, hence why I'm talking to you. And I also use Instagram and emails. And I try and be very strict with my time that I'm on it for. So, for instance, because they are work-related apps, I won't use them past, well, I try not to use them past 5 p.m. and I actually delete the apps for the weekend and reinstall on a Monday. Now, I know that might be a bit of a faff and you might just want to put like a time limit on there, or whatever works for you. But it was actually 2 social media influencers that kind of started me on this journey. So Mummalina and I've written her name down, I don't want to risk it. Ventina Lamana, the 2 of them do like lots of content about removing yourself from social media for the weekends or for the evenings, just to free up a bit more time. And then that extra time you can use however you wish. So you may decide that you want to get back to an old hobby, or you may want to spend some time with friends, with a partner, whatever works for you. But I find that, yeah, looking back at my scrolling habits, so my social media habits, whenever I'm feeling a little bit blue or a little bit down, is really helpful for me. The next one that I've done in January is about budgeting. Now, I will confess that before I was going to say before I went zero waste, but it was really before I started working for myself. I didn't really like budgeting at all. Like, it just was not a thing that came on my radar at all. And my previous work colleague, Sarah, she was like, I love budgeting. And I was like, does anybody love budgeting? And now I understand, because I now love budgeting. So I have this like budget blueprint essentially, which I scale up or scale down depending on my wage, depending on what I earn. So it's almost, I imagine it like a pie chart, and within the pie chart is sectioned up into the different parts that I'd spend my money on. So when I first went freelance and started working for myself, I was living off money from redundancy that I took from my old job. So I didn't actually have a proper income. And then I got to a point where I started having an income from this job. And when I get to a point where I have a wage increase, my little pie chart of what I spend my money on will stay the exact same. So it will just sort of scale up, scale back if I, for whatever reason, start earning a little bit less money. And by having that kind of pie chart, I always know that I have budgeted some money for spending time with friends, for fun stuff, basically. But I also know that I'll be saving, and I also know that I'll be able to cover my rent and my bills and my food. I'm not going to go into too much detail about budgeting in this live, because I am going to cover it next week. And the reason why I'm covering it next week is I always get asked about the costs involved with zero waste living. So what I'm planning to do is to basically do a before and after budget in terms of what did I used to spend money on versus what do I spend it on now, and just talking honestly about whether it's more expensive or less expensive, and just trying to have a discussion around it, because yes, there are some elements that are more expensive and there's some less expensive, but I'm not going to spoil it, because otherwise you won't come back next week. So yeah, I can't believe I am saying use your January time to budget, because old me would have been like, I do not want to do that. But actually, now I do it. Now I have a budget that I stick to, and I know each month, like, how much money is coming in, how much money I've got to spend there, there, and there. That gives me a massive amount of peace of mind. Now, you may well be thinking, I've been budgeting for years. Great. But if you haven't, this might be a good time to do it, because you may be thinking, oh, it's a long time till my payday, or is it payday this week? I don't know. You may well be thinking, oh, it's a long way off, but if you budget for when that money comes into your bank, then it will last longer, and then you won't have the February blues around money. My final one is about making a capsule wardrobe. So at the start of January, what I did was I pretty much got out every item of clothing that I own, and I put into a drawer under my bed. So these were where the clothes went that I won't be seeing for like the whole month. But basically, I'm not going to look at them until February. So they're the clothes that I think I like, but they're just in the wardrobe. I'm not really wearing them very often. So they went in there. And then every other item of clothing that I kept out, the whole idea was that each item could go with multiple other items and create multiple outfits. I had 23 items of clothing, and I managed to come up with 113 or something like that, 113 different outfits. So it would be like, oh, change the top with the same skirt, put a jumper on, or put another layer on, and see how different it looks. And the way I recorded all these different outfits was I just put my phone up on the side and I took pictures of each outfit. So I could be like, oh yeah, that looked really good with that, or that one's not so much. So yeah, having a wardrobe clear out is a nice thing to do during January when you're trying to save the dollar. I'm also going to cover about capsule wardrobes at some live in the future. So it's going to be in either February or March. I'm going to cover a little bit more detail around the capsule wardrobe. But if you do want to get started and you want a little bit more guidance on how to do it and what to focus on, we have got a checklist of building a capsule wardrobe in our zero waste planner, which you can purchase from our online shop. I'm going to pop a link to our online shop, to the planner, in the comments, so you can check that one out if you think it's going to be useful for you. Thank you for spending time with me on your Friday evening. So those were 4 tips as to how to lift the January blues without spending any money. So no money spent with any of them, and one of them about where to spend your money when it comes. But I think that's a good enough way to spend your time. If you have any other tips that you have been doing whilst it's been January, and you think other people would benefit from knowing about your ways that you have kicked the January blues, and not spent any money by doing so, please do comment so other people can get inspiration from you. I'll speak to you all next week, guys. Have a fabulous week, and thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.